welcome to my channel. Today's case is about 19-year-old Kathy Halle and other victims who may be tied to the same killer. Kathy lived with one of her sisters and a friend at the Aztec Village Apartments in Aurora, Illinois. March 29, 1979, Kathy left her apartment to go pick up her younger sister from work at the Northgate Shopping Center. Kathy never made it to pick up her sister. Her 1972 gold Dodge Charger was found in the parking lot of the apartment complex. There was a pool of blood on the floor behind the back driver's seat. Her purse was spotted by a helicopter on the roof of the apartment. It still contained money, and some of the contents had been spilled out into the car, but Kathy was nowhere to be found. North Aurora police officers carefully packaged the evidence into plastic bags to be processed and analyzed. Police released a missing persons alert describing Kathy as 5'2", 105 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes, glasses, last seen wearing blue jeans and a white ski jacket. Kathy's father was a supervisor at the FAA Air Traffic Control Center in Aurora. He and his co-workers raised a $5,000 reward. In the following days, hundreds of people searched the gravel pits and riverbanks looking for her. April 24, 1979. A 12-year-old boy and his father were fishing on the Fox River, just 200 feet from the I-88 overpass. They discovered Kathy's body floating. Years went by and there were no leads in Kathy's murder. Her cause of death was strangulation. The blood in the car was tested and it was determined to be Kathy's, but no details as to how it got there were released. In the early 2000s, DNA of people Kathy knew was tested, but no matches were found. In 2008, Kathy Halle's name was mentioned in an article along with several other who went missing or were found dead between the years of 1970 and 1980 in several surrounding suburbs. In that article, they mentioned several suspects, but were not able to tie her DNA to anyone. Now, I am going to have to backtrack to how this story played out, so I will be bouncing around from different dates and different decades because at this point, Kathy's murder was still unsolved. In 1993, the police had reopened a cold case of a 15-year-old girl named Pamela Maurer, who was found murdered and dumped on the side of College Road in Lisle, Illinois. This occurred back in January 12th of 1976. Pamela had been at a friend's house in Woodridge. She left the friend's house to walk to a nearby McDonald's to get a Coke. She never made it. It was a school night, so when Pamela hadn't returned by 11:30, her mother contacted the police. The following day, a road crew was on College Road and spotted a purse lying in the road. A man made a U-turn and looked inside the purse and found Pamela's identification. He looked over the guardrail that was nearby and found her body. Lisle was very close to Woodridge. An autopsy found that Pamela had been stabbed, strangled, and sexually assaulted. I have to note here that the paper stated she had been strangled, but a retired cop who cracked the cold case revealed she had been stabbed in 2022. In 2001, the DNA from Pamela's clothing was entered into CODIS, but there were no hits. In 2019, the DNA was entered into a genealogy database, and a profile of the killer matched family members of a man who had been dead since 1981. His name was Bruce Lindahl. When Bruce's family refused to give DNA, police exhumed his body, and on January 13, 2020, they were able to tie him to Pamela's murder. Ironically, Bruce's name had been mentioned in the 2008 article featuring Pamela Maurer, Kathy Halle, and many others, one of them being Deborah Coliander. June 23, 1980, 25-year-old Deborah Coliander was abducted as she was chaining her bike up outside the Northgate Shopping Center. This was the same center where Kathy Halle and her younger sister were. Bruce took Deborah to his home on Salisbury Avenue in Aurora and sexually assaulted her. He fell asleep, and naked Deborah was able to escape and run to a neighbor's house to call the police. A police officer who was also a friend of Bruce's took the call and used to live at that address where Bruce lived now. He said he didn't even knock. He just entered the home and found Bruce in bed naked with a tripod camera set up and nude photos of Deborah. Bruce was arrested and taken to jail. He was charged with kidnapping and sexual assault, but was able to post bail and was released. Just 1 month later, in July of 1980, he managed to get himself a job at Canelands Vocational School teaching auto repair. Bruce's trial wasn't scheduled yet, and because he hadn't been convicted, that is how he was able to get his job. On October 7, 1980, Deborah Colliander left her job at Copley Memorial Hospital and was never seen again. Deborah was supposed to testify in court against Bruce 2 weeks after her disappearance. December 22, 1980. Allegedly, Bruce attacked a woman outside of an Aurora restaurant. She was able to identify him from a photo, but that was many months later. January 28, 1981. Bruce was arrested for aggravated assault of a police officer and having a gun without a permit. Apparently, Bruce pointed a gun at an officer when he was trying to serve Bruce with a warrant for illegally recording a phone conversation. There were no more details regarding who or what Bruce was recording. February 1981. The school that Bruce worked at asked him to resign after reading about him in the paper. March 30th, 1981. The charges against Bruce were dropped in the Deborah Colliander case since she was not able to be located. April 4th, 1981. Bruce was found dead inside an ex-girlfriend's Crest Creek apartment in Naperville. Witnesses said that they had seen Bruce with 13-year-old Charles Huber Jr. earlier in the evening at a Naperville bowling alley. It is unclear if the two men knew each other before that night. However, both Bruce and Charles ended up dead at Bruce's ex-girlfriend's apartment. Bruce had begun to attack Charles in the apartment and stabbed him a total of 28 times. Charles fought back hard, so at some point in the struggle, Bruce ended up stabbing himself and severing his femoral artery, which caused him to bleed to death. He was found by the ex-girlfriend lying on top of Charles. Now, there are two differing accounts of what happened that night. One is that the girlfriend was not home and came home to discover the two dead men. The other is that she was sleeping in a bedroom and woke up to find them. After Bruce's death, hundreds of photos of naked girls and young women were later recovered from his home. Aurora police kept those photos in evidence storage. April 28, 1982. An Oswego Township farmer saw an indentation in his cornfield and used a spade and started digging. He found the remains of Deborah Colliander. An autopsy was unable to determine how she died, but her death was ruled a homicide. They have never been able to connect Bruce to her death since DNA evidence from Colliander's killer was not preserved. However, after the body was found, an unknown person contacted the Aurora police seeking a reward, stating that Bruce had contacted him to take care of Deborah so she couldn't testify against him. No further information was given. Okay, so now we are back to 2020, when Pamela Mauer's murder was solved, based on DNA. It was suspected that Bruce was responsible for Deborah Colliander's death, and we know he was responsible for Charles Huber's death. When those details were made public, a woman by the name of Annette came forward with a story regarding Bruce. Now we have to travel back to March 6, 1979, which was just 23 days before Kathy Halle would go missing. 20-year-old Annette was walking to a friend's house in Aurora. She said Bruce pulled up and started chatting with her. She didn't know him, but he asked her if she was interested in smoking some weed. She said yes, and she got in his car. He took her to his house on Sulphusburg They were in the basement, where Bruce showed her his pet falcon. He was blasting Nights in White Satin by Moody Blues. Then all of a sudden he was pointing a gun at her head. He ordered her into his bedroom and sexually assaulted her. She was able to escape and did report it to the police, but they did not take her seriously and no charges were filed, but a police report was made. Until now, only Annette's family and the police at the time knew her story. Okay, sorry. I know that I'm going to have to bounce around again, so now we're going to go back to 2020. Once the details of Bruce Lindahl emerged in the media, the cop who had sold Bruce his house had given an interview. He said after he had arrested Bruce for the kidnapping and assault of Deborah Colliander, he cut ties with Bruce. Back in the 80s, he was questioned by police to see if he had any involvement in Bruce's crimes. After that, he was shunned by his colleagues and referred to as Bruce's wormy friend. He was passed up for many promotions. He was finally reassigned to an anti-gang task force in high school. Then he did get promoted to sergeant in 1994. In 1998, he retired and moved to Vegas. When all of this resurfaced, a spokesperson for the Aurora Police Department spoke out and said that there were no officers still working there who were around at the time of Bruce's crimes. He did confirm that the cop, a friend of Bruce's, was on reports involving Bruce from 1979 and 1980. The cop maintains he did not know any of Bruce's crimes. If he would have, he would have done something. June of 2022. A 3-part documentary series called The Box was released, and it featured the cold case detective who cracked the Pamela Maurer case. I only found out about this when I started researching this story, and I tried to find it, but you have to pay to watch, and I'm not buying another subscription. However, the detective Chris Loudon was interviewed and gave some details to what was featured in the series. His assignment when he became a Lyle police detective was to solve 3 cold cases. He was able to solve 2 from the 90s before diving into Pamela Maurer's case, which, as you know, was solved in 2020. The title, The Box, was used because Chris was now in possession of the box of photographs that were recovered from Bruce Lindahl's home in 1981. The interview asked Chris why he was telling his story now since Bruce had been dead for years, and his answer was because he wanted to see if Bruce was connected with several other cold cases, and if not, get the message out to the people who may be responsible and are still alive that eventually they will be caught with this new technology. Here is a bit of what came from the interview with Chris. Bruce Lindahl moved from Woodridge to Aurora in 1978. Supposedly, he was charismatic and could charm women. He also had a violent temper. Apparently, the cop Bruce befriended and who sold Bruce his house was interviewed for this series as well. He said Bruce was a smooth talker and he would show his friends slideshows of the chicks he met. The cop met Bruce at a skydiving place. Classmates of Bruce at Downers Grove North High School were also interviewed, along with other women who had been assaulted by Bruce. Others who were interviewed were people who knew Pamela Maurer, and it was revealed that after the murder, people in Pamela's neighborhood were questioned and Bruce's name was given as someone Pamela had met from a friend of hers. Chris Loudon also gave names of murders Bruce could have been involved in. Kathy Halle was one of them, but in 2022, Kathy's case was still not solved. He mentioned 17-year-old Elizabeth Drews from Downers Grove. She was last seen on June 1, 1977. She left her home around 2:30 on foot to walk to her receptionist job at Downers Grove Animal Clinic. She stopped at Downers Grove High School to try to get a ride from a friend, but was unsuccessful. October 5, 1977. A couple who was walking in the woods near Benediction University on College Road in Lisle found Elizabeth's decomposed body. The police were unable to make a positive identification, but the clothing on her body matched what Elizabeth had been last seen wearing, and a purse containing items with her name on it was found nearby. As of 2024, there is no evidence linking Bruce Lindahl to her murder. 16-year-old Deborah McCall, who went by Debbie, was last seen leaving Downers Grove High School on November 5, 1979. She was 16 years old, not 19 like some reports have said. She was still in high school and was born in 1963, so she definitely was not 19. Also, one source says the date she was last seen was November 6th, but it is November 5th. Debbie was last seen wearing a sweater, a beige hooded zip-up jacket, blue jeans, light brown suede shoes, and a yellow gold necklace. At the time of her disappearance, she stood 5'2" and weighed 105 pounds. She had long brown hair and gray eyes. Her teeth were crooked, and she had freckles. She may have been wearing contacts. Her body has never been found, and police do have dental records for comparison if she ever is found. Police found Debbie's photo in Bruce Lindahl's possession. Here is a picture of her without makeup and another with makeup. December 15, 1980, 21-year-old Susan Javinsky was found stabbed to death in her Oswego apartment. She was a beautician at JCPenney. Susan's case is a hard one to find any information on. No idea why they suspect Bruce could be involved. Maybe more details were given in the series The Box. As of 2024, there is no information about Susan's murder. Aurora Police Detective Ryan Pete was assigned the cold case of Kathy Halle. In 2020, when DNA solved Pamela Mauer's case, Aurora Police started looking back at Kathy's case, and they began working with the Lyle Police on DNA methods. They submitted some of Kathy's belongings to Illinois DuPage County Crime Lab for testing, but the material was too degraded. In December 2022, Ryan and other officers attended a DNA training conference and learned about a new DNA analysis called MVAC. MVAC sprays a solution onto an item while loosening any DNA and sucking it out. It can get DNA out of fibers underneath porous surfaces such as rocks and clothing. However, that type of testing came with a price tag. In January 2023, Aurora Police began working with DNA Labs International out of Florida. A nonprofit organization, Seasons of Justice, was able to pay the $10,000 fee for testing. June of 2023, the Aurora Police Department drove the evidence to Florida. In August of 2024, the results came back as being a match to Bruce Lindahl. Bruce's DNA was found on Kathy Halle's clothing. Kathy's family has chosen to stay out of the spotlight, and Aurora Police asked that their privacy be respected. In an October 2024 press conference, they also asked the media not to reach out to the family for questions. They praised all the men and women who worked on Kathy's case over the years and the well-preserved evidence in Kathy's case. This case on Bruce Lindahl is still continuing to evolve at this time. Hopefully more media will pick up this and bring awareness to other unsolved cases Bruce could be related to and either tie him to them or rule him out. MVAC right now is not rolled out to any other agencies at this time. I hope as DNA techniques evolve, we will see more and more cold cases are solved. Thank you for listening. I will catch you on my next video.